Oh yes, what a machine. If Marvel made motorbikes, this would be it. It's unreal. The future's definitely here. The year's 2022, and this test is definitely one of the ones which has been the most hyped up test of the last decade, I'd say. You know, Stark Future have definitely come with a new bike, a new concept. It's electric. It's almost like the internet started all over again, where we needed something new, I believe, and we've certainly got it. Now, coming into this test, I really wanted to keep an open mind because of the hype surrounding the bike. You know, as you know, I am a two-stroke man through and through. I love bikes regardless, you know, whether they're electric, combustion, two-stroke, four-stroke. I love riding them bikes. I think most people do love riding the bikes. You know, the but is that the four-stroke has caused lots of issues for our sports over the years. Since the introduction of the four-stroke, obviously, it seems a lot more tracks have closed down due to the noise. Obviously, we're getting more and more overpopulated as a globe, not just as a country here in the UK, but as a globe. And with that comes houses, obviously. And it does seem that most houses do tend to sit alongside most motocross tracks or even on motocross tracks. Hence why we've been losing so many. So it seems now basically that the motocross world, you know, we are two-stroke mad, we're nostalgia mad. You know, two-strokes have made a massive revival. It's great to see, you know, the investment going into the old bikes, the events going on at the old bikes. It's nothing new if we're honest, but it does seem to be where we're in the world of social media that it does seem to get a lot more attention than the four banger. With that said, the reason why why I mentioned that, and two, why I wanted to keep an open mind on the electric bike is because Stark Future have come in with a new bike which is called the Stark Varg, and the concept behind the Stark Varg is basically to build a sustainable bike, a bike that basically can tackle some of these issues. And also, let's not be fooled, one of their main focus, which they're not shy of saying, is that they want to compete with a combustion engine. So the excitement around this bike is huge globally, and I'm already led to believe that the orders that they've already taken for the bike is huge. You know, I think there's something like 10,000 units already that they've got to meet in October 2022. They've got a vision of selling like 150,000 bikes with the new facility that they're getting built. What surprised me is the hate for the electric bike. It's quite interesting reading some of the comments, you know, of how much hate that there is regarding or surrounding the bike. Yes, I know that the bike's quiet, and I understand the issues surrounding charging the machine, but for me, I just really wanted to test the bike and go like for like against a combustion engine, or the feel of what I have for, you know, for the two-stroke or for the four-stroke. And also, you know, for the experience, on the fun factor. Is it going to be fun? Am I going to enjoy it? Is it going to be competitive? These are all the things that I really wanted to keep an open mind on and not really absorb too much of the negative surrounding the Stark. You know, because we all know what the positives could be. That's going to take a while for that to kind of roll out, and for basically to see who's right and who's wrong regarding. But at the moment, you know, the test is all about, am I going to enjoy the bike? What am I going to feel when I'm on the track? Am I going to be able to push it? What's the capabilities of it? You know, these are all the things that I basically wanted answering, as well as the obvious, you know, how long does it take to charge? You know, do you need to work on it? Do you need to be a cyber tech geek? There's so many different questions that need to be answered. I'm not sure that we're going to get them all done on this test, but certainly what we are going to get across is the feel of the bike. So first of all, we had a presentation on the bike, and you know, and they discussed obviously the process of making it, developing it. Sebastian Tortelli played a big hand in that. So did Josh Hill. Josh Hill was already on a previous electric bike, so I take it that he's got a good understanding. I'm led to believe that Stark as a company, they've got all the best people involved in helping develop this bike and to push it forward. They pride themselves on working with the best people to be the best. So a couple of the things that interested me, on the bike was one that everything was, has been made and developed by Stark, except for 3 things, which was the brakes. I think the wheels was 50/50 and the suspension, which is KIB, but they've got their suspension settings in there. The next obviously is the battery, the battery tech. The flying V, as they like to call it. Now I believe that design is to complement the chassis, complement the feel. And regarding on that, when they were given a breakdown, it's a unique thing regarding the chassis and the battery and the suspension and how everything all works in harmony, to give you the rider's experience out on track. Yeah, they've taken lots of different motocross bikes. And it seems like they've basically tested them thoroughly, so they've seen what the mass centralization's like, what the stability's like, what the trail's like, what the ground clearance is, and then they've come up with something which is very similar or close, but maybe better in their opinion, which I'd like to test. But again, there's nothing else to test this bike against at the moment in, let's say, in its own world. So it's only going to be tested against the combustion engine. So moving forward from that, I spoke to Paul a lot about the battery, how long does it take to charge, sort of what would a rider get, the average rider get from it. And it was quite an open conversation that we had. But yeah, what our open conversation was how long does it take to charge? How easy is it to, let's say for the worst power output that you could get on the facility or the practice track, race meeting, wherever you would be, how long would it take to charge? So, he ran me through very, very simple basics. Was, depending on the rider, you could possibly get hours out of the battery if you was just to take it easy on an average trail. I think they were saying something like 6 hours. If you was to ride it like a GP rider or an MXGP rider, you'd be getting 35 minutes. But one of the things what he did explain, which was quite interesting, was that the battery always doesn't need to be at 100%. It can run at 80% and then drop down, for you to still get the maximum power. Now, bearing in mind this bike is still a prototype, and they're still working, it seems, every day to improve what they've got. And when the bikes come out in October, my reports potentially could be a little bit pointless, because they'll have already covered some of the things that I'd have talked about in this video, and they'll have addressed them, and it'll already be out. Because I know that the bike in October is potentially going to be a little bit lighter anyway. They might have a little bit more info regarding on batteries and the supplying power to these batteries. But going back to the conversation that we had, so if you run the bike for, let's say, 40 minutes, then if you've got a good charging point, it would take you then anywhere from 50 minutes to an hour to recharge that bike back up to probably just over 80% for you to be able to go out and ride again. That in itself, it's not so bad, but at the same time as well, it's a little bit of a negative, because how we work in the UK at the minute with the practice tracks, if you go out for 15 minutes or a 20-minute session, you've roughly got 40 minutes before you next go out again. So it'd be interesting to see how that works regarding on the charging points that are going to be available at the tracks around the UK when this bike is launched. But after speaking to Stark, they're well aware of the pitfalls that this bike may have to the end consumer, and they're addressing them daily. So they really are pushing forward, and it's quite, it makes me get buzzed up when I'm listening to the guys and how they're talking about the future and what their and what their current plans are, and how they feel that maybe the sport can progress, which in itself, it needs to be applauded. So as soon as I got onto the bike felt quite slim, quite solid. It wasn't alien to me at all. As a matter of fact, it felt the complete opposite. The only thing that was a little bit strange was looking over at my left hand and not seeing the lever there. So straight away getting onto the bike, riding off on the bike, you could instantly feel the power. It was instant. The bike in itself handled great. It felt light when I was riding the bike. I rode around the track and was, you know, didn't know the track at all, so I was learning it, didn't know what was coming next, left, right, the table, step up. The track was very technical, and I've got to say that the Golf MX is a brilliant facility. But it was a little bit challenging as well as riding the bike and basically getting a good feel for the bike. So I took my time, and as you do, you know, you case and bounce off a couple of the end of the jumps and tabletops, and you smack into a couple of the uprises on the step ups, and the bike handled it surprisingly well. Like it really was a surprise when I was riding around. At first I thought maybe it felt a little bit heavy and a little bit lumpy, with just that weight between my legs and underneath, but actually that wasn't the case. You know, once I'd kind of thought, well, no, actually my bike would probably feel a little bit worse than this. So that in itself impressed me, why I was just getting a feel for the bike. So after that session we come in, and then they asked me what I felt of the bike. I did even also drop the bike, and I've got to say that my first impressions of the bike were absolutely, you know, mind-blowing. I could really sense and feel the potential that the bike had, and you know, it was already in standard form. So moving forward from that, you know, I stressed a couple of the issues that I had maybe with the bike personally, which was I'd like to have the bike have a little bit more balance in the air, and that didn't come from the suspension. First of all, what that come from was, you know, was basically when I rolled off the throttle, or when I hit the throttle at the faces of jumps, I wanted a little bit of restriction, a little bit of lag. So they made that adjustment, which is, again, you know, this is impressive in itself. So for example, the adjustment scale is from 0 to 30. When I rode the bike, it was, let's say, at 80%, or it was at, not 80%, but it was at 80 for like engine lag. They adjusted that and they took it to 85. Instantly at 85, I felt like the bike was something that I felt real at home on in the air. So when I was taking off and kind of preloading stuff, you know, I felt at home. When I wanted to get the front wheel to dip and I wanted to find that balance in the air from maybe previously where I was sky wheeling the bike a little bit in the air, you know, the bike had that dip, it come down. If I wanted to pick up the wheel in the air and rev it a little bit so I could get some traction before I just landed and hit the ground, it did that. So all of them things, it really did help. Now they suggested that maybe I should try 87. Some riders go from 85 to 90. Now again, that was applying so it had engine braking, and it made me feel comfortable. So the next thing after that was, you know, what are the capabilities of this bike? Well, you know, the capabilities of it is programmed. So you could have it as an 85, a 125, a 250F, a 450, a 500. You know, if you've got the data which basically replicates them bikes that I've just mentioned, then it can go into that bike and carry that kind of feel. So after getting a real good feel for the bike and feeling at home on the bike, I adjusted the suspension. I got speaking to Sebastian Tortelli, and it was really interesting on the level that we was talking, and he was really open and really open and honest, and really helpful in terms of helping me get the bike set up to where I wanted it to be. And you know, Seb watched me riding, and he basically said, you know, I'm riding a little bit more on the rear. So he had the guys, you know, adjust the rear shock a little bit, which was just like, you know, 1 or 2 clicks here or there. We applied, I should have said, we took off some of the tension on the spring as well, just to let the bike squat a little bit more, which I then felt like I could follow through the turn a lot better. The flow around the track after them adjustments was, you know, basically was such a big gain to me in confidence, and also as well in riding the bike. I really did feel then that I could kind of, you know, pull out of turns a little bit tighter and make the jumps also as well. It just felt like it tracked a little bit better for me. Now I experienced something for the first time ever in a test launch, which is saying something, because I've been doing these tests for a long time. It's the first time that a company has actually brought the competitors' bikes along for you to test, which they have done. Now Golf MX, the track, it was closed down due to noise, so we only had a limited time on the combustion engines. But we did manage to get 5 laps in, and that was surprising. Instantly when I rode the bike, You know, I could feel the lag. The bike felt a little bit more frumpy, big. I enjoyed riding it and getting around, but it was surprising as well that I even stalled the bike, you know. And this was just all down to the things of working the gearbox and just getting back into, let's say, motocross mode. But it really did open my eyes into what the capabilities are of the Stark and the electric bike, in the sense of where I had some issues before, which I thought were issues regarding with the bike, they weren't issues. The bike is just actually that good to ride that you are homing in on minor details. You know, the Stark's been criticised for having no gears. So, well, actually it's got 2 gears, but you haven't got to make a gear change. Now, what some people are worried about regarding that is that maybe they think that it would be like a level playing field. You know, they're going to take some away of the rider's advantage that they might have over the next rider. You know, the rider that basically doesn't shift right, all of a sudden can up his level to the rider that does. That's kind of, you know, got his craft dialed, you know, when he's coming down and when he's shifting. Now, I can see that point, totally see that point, and it's a valid point. But honestly, my opinion is that if you took a rider which has a lower ability than, let's say that rider 1 has a lower ability than rider 2 on a combustion engine, now that's for a reason. It's not just down to gear shifting. That rider is going to find a way, I believe, to ride that Stark faster and better. So whether it be down to gear changing, it will just be something else, down to line choice, down to the way that he applies the throttle, or the way that he rides the bike around the track. So for me, you know, I get the worry, but I don't really see it as a worry. Now, regarding as in, did I enjoy not changing gear on the bike? Yeah, I did actually. Did I miss it? Not really. Did I feel that it was a disadvantage or not? It was strange coming into the turns, first of all, when I overshot a couple of the turns, because I'm used to that, you know, changing down the box and getting the bike to drag and then making the turn. Which is why I had a little bit of engine drag put onto the bike in the first place. So when I rolled off the throttle, I would have that kind of feel and that connection to the ground. So the capabilities of this bike with programming is limitless. You know, it really is down to a rider's feel on the bike. You can basically, you know, alter and change this bike to your skill set. So there's 2 ways of kind of seeing that. One is that it's a negative, because people could have the same kind of information across the board. So then basically everybody would be riding the same kind of spec. The other is, if you've got the capability of feeling stuff and changing it and reporting back, it's like having MotoGP mechanics at your fingertips. You know, that information, you can really kind of make a difference to your machine, you know, without going away from the track and without speaking to or having the bike tuned. You know, if you feel that the bike needs less drag, you know, then you can apply that and you can use the brakes if you want more. It really does depend on your technique. So if you're in touch with your technique and your skill set, then, you know, the bike, you can cater the bike to that. So again, where I'm going with that is that is a massive advantage, or could be potentially a massive advantage over the next guy when you've got let's say, you know, when you've got a full line of Stark. So I suppose one of the big questions is, you know, at club level, if a guy's riding a 450 4-stroke and a guy's riding a Stark, you know, will he be quicker? Potentially, yes, because it will be a little bit easier for him to ride. But at the same time, that all depends on, you know, on kind of how he rides that bike, you know, because you do need to adjust accordingly to ride the Stark a little bit. It's not massive, but you just need to understand, yes, not hearing the noise of an engine or the bike, it takes a little bit of getting used to. Will everybody be able to get used to that? I don't know. I would like to think so. The next thing is the brakes, the way that the brakes operate, and the way that the power comes in, which obviously is mappable. You can change that. But, you know, in standard form, if we're going kind of like for like, you know, that's one of the big questions, you know, because one of the things that people always say about is regarding, you know, it's got no clutch. So a clutch potentially sometimes is like a lifeline. You can pull it in and kind of correct yourself and then fire it off the clutch if you need be, or keep the throttle open and fire off the clutch. Now, the reason why I mention that is because, you know, with the Stark, you're going to have to develop a bit of a different style. So, you know, you're going to have to set up the turn, get it right, come in. You know, the line options around the track is definitely going to be limitless. So you can go outside, inside, wherever you like, but you're going to have to do that with a bit of a different technique. So that's a hard question to answer, really, because it depends on, I suppose, how the track develops and so forth. But what I would say is that rider is definitely going to beat him to the first turn. You know, it sounds like I'm banging on here really and just kind of, you know, singing its praises. Now, obviously there is negatives. For me personally, you know, I moved the rear brake from foot to hand. I found that a little bit easier than to ride, and the reason why I found that easier to ride was because of that lifeline. So for example, when I come out the turn, I could hold the rear brake on. If I went over a few of the rollers and the bike picked up, previously I'd have to try and roll off and I'd be hanging off the bike. Well, this time, you know, hitting the foot pedal at that point is difficult, and the next braking system for that after that is the right hand front brake, which you don't want to hit. So I moved the lever up onto the handlebars, which then allowed me to pull that in any kind of position where I was. I did think that maybe that would be a negative on some of the turns, because as much as it's a positive, let's say on a right hander where you've got your leg off and you can use the rear brake, it potentially also is a little bit of a negative on the left hander when you come in and you're using the brake and you're turning. But it found like when I was riding around that track that actually it was a positive through most of the turns, a real good positive, and I actually felt at home on it, and especially in the air, which was a worry. When I was jumping the bike, I could tap it, lock the back brake up and bring the bike level, or, you know, or get the front end down so I could get the drive off the down ramp with the transition. One of the things that I did find with that, moving that brake lever up onto the handlebars, was straight line stability when braking. It was, you know, the pressure was then all onto my arms. Also as well with the current map that was in the bike, and again, you know, like I've touched on, you know, you can tailor these maps to your own riding style. But I just felt at certain times that power delivery, when it come on a little bit instant. It was trying to get that fit, I was trying to get that feel. Maybe it was, you know, after some time or a little bit more time on the bike, we could iron that out. But certainly you definitely did feel that hit. I'm led to believe from my guys that are in the motor control world with the electric motor control cars, that you know, that basically with mapping and how they map their cars, that's achievable. I'm pretty sure that the guys at Stark are already well in front on that scene, and you're going to have so many different options to choose from. And again, like that's not to scare you, so I wouldn't be scared by that. Be guy going, oh, I've got so many different options, what do I do? I mean, for me personally, I rode the bike, you know, exactly how they'd kind of set it up, with a few tweaks, and felt at home on it. So I'm pretty sure they're going to put you straight in the ballpark of where you need to be with the type of track that you're going to be riding. I'm led to believe washing the bike isn't a problem. It's pretty sealed up there. You've got no problems in washing the bike. You will have to go with the bike fully charged to the track, you know, as I've mentioned before, and then you're going to have to charge it from there at this stage. So I think that they're going to try to address that, but that is a negative. But yeah, a few people were saying, you know, regarding on that sense, you know, what happens if the throttle sticks open? What happens if this? Well, you've got that lanyard, so you can basically just kill that engine at any time. And again, that's a good and a bad thing, because, you know, if your hand does come off and it is attached, then you could potentially cut the engine on the bike. It is a lot of money in terms of what's already out there on the market. I'm going to relate back to like the e-bikes now. You know, everybody was banging on about the e-bikes and how bad they were, and then the next thing you know, everybody's got one and how much fun they are. I feel like that's probably going to happen regarding with the Stark Varg. I feel like once people get on the bike and ride it with an open mind, they are gonna love the bike. The reason why I mentioned that is because not everybody's going to be able to afford, you know, the price of the bike. But again, you know, people have been kind of moaning on and saying the bike's too expensive and a sport is going to get too expensive. But let's be honest, you know, we've got CR500s and KX500s going for extortionate prices, you know, so people are buying them, and if you want to get hold of one of those, you know, they're pretty hard to find. So it's definitely the money's there. It's just whether it's worth the money, and unfortunately we're going to have to, that's going to be the test of time. At the moment, for me, riding the bike and seeing the benefits that the bike has to offer in terms of the amount of time that I can ride the bike and where I can ride the bike, I'd have one if I had the money. So yeah, I do believe that this will present new opportunities and places for us to ride. This bike is, you know, is called Stark Varg, which I believe is strong wolf in Swedish, and the company is Stark Future. Now, is this the future? I believe that it has its place, and it certainly has all the ingredients to basically recreate our sport.